Now, before we talk about Peacemaker Season 1,
Sure.
I guess we should throw it out there that it's been confirmed that Peacemaker Season 2 is moving forward.
Whoa.
James Gunn will write and direct. He's currently making his way through Guardians of the Galaxy. You'll finish that off, I presumably.
Sure. Or he might abandon it as a goof.
Just bin it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it now. We're going to do non-spoilers and then spoilers, would you say?
Sure,
Those some spoilers, because there's things that you kind of have to talk about when you talk about a show.
Yeah.
But I feel like him moving over to DC, which kind of happened by accident.
Sure, yeah.
Because of that was dropped by Marvel for a time, was a very lucky circumstance for him.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a universe and a world that works very well with his new and old aesthetic.
Sure,
Do you know
yeah.
what I mean by that?
I think I do.
Because for Peacemaker, for example, the show that we are currently talking about, it's got the gore of his early kind of trauma stuff, or a Slither, or the wrench-hitting man.
Not as much, but...
yeah, but it's definitely there. And then it's also kind of got
he hasn't had to completely clean up his act.
No, and then he can be sweary, but then it's got the fun team dynamic of a Guardians, for example, you know what I mean? I think he can also get emotional and sad and depressing and grim and grim and gross, but also, again, it's got that heart to it. So
you know why? Because nobody cares about these characters. That's why.
You're probably right.
That's
which is probably the same with Guardians, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, because there's no impetus or there's no editorial mandate to be these characters must be like this because we need to, pinball them into another series or into another movie or what have you. If he was I want to do a Batman series and I want this to happen to Batman, there'd be meetings, and I'm sure there's meetings with these. I
I want to talk about that specifically in a bit.
Yeah, but if anybody wants to make a change to Batman, that's got to go through everybody in the world.
Well, there's a number of times in this series, and this is not a spoiler, I guess, but where he references other superheroes and then says a thing that he read that they did.
Yes.
And it's always an awful sexual thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And
because he's just a liar.
He's just a liar.
Or he reads it on Facebook.
Whatever, yeah. But the one that they had trouble with was Batman.
Yeah.
That was the one specifically that I can't remember what he said specifically about Superman, and he says something really terrible about Green Arrow in the last episode.
Yeah.
But Batman was the one where they went, well, Batman's he's serious actually.
Yeah,
that's kind of our golden goose at Warner Brothers.
Well, it's just for a bit of background on Peacemaker. So Peacemaker wasn't originally created for DC. It was from Peacemaker was part of a basket of characters that DC acquired when they bought another company called Charlton Comics in the 80s. So basically they acquired them all in the 80s, and then writer Alan Moore, who was writing for DC at the time before he swore off writing for DC and Marvel forever, he heard that they'd acquired these characters, and he was and he immediately wrote a story outline for a 12-issue series starring all of them.
Why have I never heard of this?
I know, right? So he went to DC editorial with this, and they were like, okay, we like this, but what the story you've written will permanently remove some of these characters, and we want to integrate them into the regular DC universe and make them big stars.
So what are some of these characters? For a Blue Beetle was in there.
A Blue Beetle was in there.
The Question
was in there. Peacemaker, Peter Cannon, Thunderbolt.
Yep.
And so instead of doing that, Alan Moore and artist Dave Gibbons, of course, redesigned and renamed all these characters and created.
They did the Killing Joke.
That's a Killing Joke.
Thank you.
I'm laughing so hard I died.
Oh, thank you.
But they made Watchmen.
The ultimate compliment.
That's the ultimate joke. But obviously, what I think is ironic about that is that Watchmen hasn't been out of print since the 80s. But all the characters that DC bought to maybe potentially become their new kind of stars, they all got a kind of a big push in the early mid 80s. They all got their own book at some point, I think. Yeah. But then they all just sort of got relegated to the background. Yeah. Including Peacemaker, who became the comedian in Watchmen.
The biggest was before this was probably Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
Probably
Blue Beetle because he was on the Justice League sometimes.
Yeah. That's really interesting though, isn't it? That now, I mean, and obviously the Watchmen characters also, it's funny because they bring them back anyway in various prequels, or they a new person will be Rorschach or whatever. So not that really mattered anyway.
Yeah. But it's interesting that it's taken more than 30 years to get one of these characters, like one of these Charlton characters, into the mainstream. And it's also interesting that Peacemaker in the comic books is serious business.
Yeah.
Like, he's not a jokey. And I mean, it also, like the Suicide Squad, I imagine they'll tweak the character in the comic books to be more like the TV series. But Peacemaker and Vigilante are like serious business in the comic. They're not joke characters. No. But because nobody cares about these characters.
And the same thing, again, happened to Guardians.
Yeah.
Although a lot of that was established, though, in like later runs, to be fair.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
You can do whatever you want with these characters.
And I guess you can do even more with like these characters because this is a spin-off of Suicide Squad, which just any dropkick can be in.
Yes, that's true.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So I think that's super interesting, the way that this has ended up. And look, it's very good.
It is good.
It's definitely one of the better comic book shows on TV. And I think, well, first of all, like it's very well written, it's well cast, it's well acted, like it looks great. But also, and I think a lot of shows recently kind of suffer from this. It is like the exact right amount of episodes.
Yeah.
For the story they want to tell. Like the pacing is so tight, and they're mysteries, but they're resolved in a way that doesn't feel like, can we get to the thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's very well paced in the sense that, like, tension builds and then there's a big problem and then they solve the problem, but then another thing emerges and tension builds again. And there's like a lot of layers because it's a team that don't trust each other.
Yeah.
And there's also lots of external forces acting upon them.
And they're very under-resourced and none of them have superpowers probably. You know what I mean? But I also think what it does nail in terms of like the original Peacemaker character and what's the other one called? Vigilante is that they're very efficient killers.
Sure, yeah.
Like there's a moment where Vigilante goes into prison to go after a certain character, and in doing so, like this guy.
The Hamburglar.
The Hamburglar, yeah.
He goes into prison to kill the Hamburglar.
He's in over his head here. Like there's a bunch of white supremacists. He's about to get stomped, but he just fucking like wipes the floor with them very easily. And I think so even though they are a joke, they are for the things that they need to do there. Yeah. You can see why they survive.
Yeah,
basically.
sure.
You can see why they're still around. Why, if someone comes up against them who is superpowered, how they can get out of that. I think it absolutely works. And the team itself, like Jennifer Holland, Daniel Brooks, like they're all excellent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like really, really, good together. And they all even like they all kind of get little action moments. Some more kind of hand to hand than others.
Yeah.
And that's all very good also.
It's very good, yeah.
Because they're all kind of lower level, like middle management, suicides, like task force X characters, or they've been like demoted from the movie, if you've seen the movie, which you probably have. But again, they're all like, they can all use a gun and they all know a little bit of self-defense, for them.
A little bit of Krav Maga.
Yeah, exactly, except probably Steve Agee. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But just really good stuff. Here's a question for you though, because a few people, like none of my friends have watched this. One of my normie friends. And I'm like, you should watch it. It's really good. You'll like it. And then I'm like, but you have to see the Suicide Squad really going into this. And a lot of people have just gone, I'm not watching
We saw the previous Suicide Squad.
Which is a massive...
I don't know if you have to.
No, well, that's what I was going to say, because I think you should, because it's a very good movie and it leads perfectly into this, obviously. But do you think you could just go into this as
I think you could go into this. If I have one criticism about this series, it is some of the stuff in this series very similar to stuff that happened in the Suicide Squad.
Okay, sure.
Like part of the overarching plot, very similar.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I didn't think about that, but you're right. Like the threat.
And I think if you went the Suicide Squad and then immediately into this, you'd be like, is this all this guy does?
Yeah, that's
all this guy does?
Yeah.
I mean, the finer details are different.
Yes.
But it is kind of...
So I didn't even know it. I didn't even kind of make that connection. But also like...
Because you were on your phone the whole time.
I'm on the phone the whole time. But often with like, comic book shows and DC stuff or whatever, there is a larger looming threat, whatever that might be. And it's often a similar-ish thing, potentially.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That didn't bother me. And I guess with the threat also... It feels high stakes enough to be over the head of these people, but not the Justice League. But they're probably doing something else.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Until they would be needed. But I think they perfectly, like they hit that exact level of challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah.
The action is very good. Like it's all very well choreographed and very gory, head stomped and limbs broken. And maybe they fight a gorilla in one episode. Who is to say, Mason?
But I was speaking of that.
Yeah.
They do. They fight a gorilla. But This movie, and I don't want to compare this to any other TV series that we've seen recently, but it's better than the Book of Boba Fett by a very wide margin. But it's interesting that it's obviously a lot cheaper.
It would have to be.
Like, it would be a lot. Like, there's elements to this where they're clearly like, where should we set this fight sequence? I don't know, parking lot.
Yeah,
just a parking lot or a field. Yeah. I don't know. Like, but it's
that's true. Yeah,
and I think with the when they fight the gorilla, spoilers, they fight a gorilla.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the gorilla is out of like
you don't see it, and it's dark.
Yeah, you don't see it, and it's dark. So, but its effect, like,
it doesn't look fake.
No, and it does feel like a very effective, sequence, and it does feel dangerous. And the fight sequences are really good.
Yeah.
In that they
certainly break a lot of tiles and walls.
They break a lot of tiles. It feels like a real fight between two skilled fighters going on. It doesn't feel like. There's a great flow to it, and it doesn't feel like, okay, you punch and then you'll block and then
I'll punch and then
It just feels like it always feels when there's two people having a fist fight in this, it just feels like two experts going at it.
Well, yeah, I think one of the ones that stood out for me was the Peacemaker versus Judomaster, who's like this 5 foot tall, like amazing martial artist. But it's also the way the fight kind of plays out is that. Just because he's smaller, even though he's probably more skilled, he can't beat Peacemaker because Peacemaker's a house.
Yes, exactly.
And we'll just throw him through a car.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that they took all of those things into consideration, and you see that when somebody fights another person, they factor in what that person could do in this particular scenario. Or maybe they'll just trip over a fence and break their leg.
Sure.
Or something, for example. I also think like all the different little things that his helmet does is help with different various helmets. I like that. So his father, who's played by Robert Patrick.
That his father's a white supremacist.
I didn't say that, Mason.
Wow.
You said that.
Wow.
But his father, who is a white supremacist, and I don't like that actually.
Wow. You've changed your tune.
Yeah, I
got a lot of texts that say the exact opposite of that.
He's got like an interdimensional workshop.
Yeah.
And that's just this weird little comic book trope. Or like idea.
Robert Patrick is very good at playing just a horrible man.
Isn't he just?
Have they... do you think they've sized him up somehow? Robert Patrick?
Made him bigger.
Because there's a moment where you see them both sitting on a stoop. John Cena and Robert Patrick.
Let me check his height.
Because maybe he's always been very tall, but I always think of him as...
I thought he was like smaller than Arnold.
Like he's supposed to be quite small, but there's a moment where they're both sitting on a stoop and they look like about the same size, or even like Robert Patrick's bigger than him.
Actually, Robert Patrick is 1.83 meters, 183 centimeters, and John Cena is 1.85. So they're around the same height.
Okay, right.
I guess John Cena's just like, he's wide. I did like the backstory of Peacemaker though. Yeah. And that, the situation with his brother and like you understand why he is the way he is. And he's not a bad person because the ideals that his dad have, which also I do not share.
Sure.
It's conflicting for him because he wants to do good and he needs his dad or he thinks he does.
Yeah.
But also he's kind of like, yeah, he's a white supremacist. But
I'll tell you what I did like about the series. I like almost everything about the series.
Yeah.
But a thing that I especially liked is they managed to segue him out of being like an irredeemably awful person. Going into this, or prior to the release of this, I assumed that this was going to be a prequel.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because I'm like, well, after
he died.
Yeah.
Well, no, he's not. He's in the end of the
but
movie,
I'm like, well, he's an awful villain essentially, and I don't believe I would enjoy seeing his antics.
Yeah, he wasn't, and we talked about this after the movie came out, he wasn't our choice for a spin-off show.
No.
But obviously, like, James Gunn had a very good idea and wanted to run with that. Yeah, which is probably why he's making this show and we're doing this podcast.
Correct, yes.
That's the only difference between us.
I think so too, yeah.
I like also little things.
Your hair's a little bit grayer than his.
How dare you, Mason, quite frankly. I've got some black in this.
Yeah, no, he's all
I do like his grey hair, though.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
I like those little moments where, like, he's having a confrontation with his dad's neighbor, who's like an old guy, and he's like, what kind of superhero are you? Where's your rogues gallery? And he's like, they're all fucking dead because I kill them.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation about how Batman's a moron because he keeps letting people out is the bit that they were like, should we put this in or whatever? Also, what version of Batman is in this universe even? I guess we'll find out soon.
Yeah.
But and even little things like they mentioned like Matter Eating Lad Kite Man, Doll Man, Batmite, all these minor kind of characters.
I love the idea, and I wish they'd done more of this. In this, the point of difference of the DCEU to the MCU is that the MCU was like being created as we were watching it, but the DCEU, they just went, this universe has been around for a long time.
That's really true,
and there's just crazy stuff happens all the time.
You just haven't seen it.
You just haven't seen it yet, and it's just been part of the history, and this is just a world that's gotten used to this weird stuff.
Yeah.
And, why not Batmite? Sure.
Why not Batmite?
Why not Batmite? Yeah.
Why not Batmite? Let's do spoilers.
Okay.
So
also the opening title sequence.
Yeah, it's interesting.
If anybody skips that, criminal.
It's weird, so weird because before I saw it, James Gunn was like, my goal was to make an unskippable intro. And I'm like, impossible.
Yeah.
There is not an intro that I skip, that I don't skip. And he's right. And it's the song from like 2010 as well. It's not. I thought it was like a hair metal song from the 80s.
No, they're like Wigwam from like Norway or Iceland or Sweden or something like that. They're like the Darkness.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
They're kind of like that. They're like a funny glam metal band, but they seem to take everything very seriously. But if you listen to the lyrics, you're like, what? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But a lot of the bands like there's some real deep cuts in there. Some of the bands that like there's various scenes where people go through old record collections and I'm like, are any of these real? I don't know. I thought I was pretty across bad 80s hair metal bands, but I guess not.
I mean, James Gunn has like very like eclectic, and I think growing up in that era, he's probably like, for example, we brought up the other week Sister Hazel, and that's our
that's our That's beautiful, yeah. That's how we bond.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that everybody's in the opening sequence.
Yeah.
Just spoilers, whatever.
Just everybody who's in the entire show, pretty much, With, I was going to say some exceptions, like of minor characters, but even like the janitor.
The janitor's in
who's in like an episode and a half, maybe, Or not
Danielle Brooks' character's wife is in the is front and center in the dance sequence.
Amanda Waller, though, not in it.
Oh, good point. Yeah,
not a lot of play. But anyways,
best series ever.
I agree.
What a good time. And also, I think I mentioned this earlier. If you do watch it, go to the end of the credits because they do outtakes, and it's just. It's either jokes that ended up on the cutting room floor because they were too long, or just bits where people were just riffing.
Yeah.
And there's a sequence in one episode where Peacemaker is mad at a character Peacemaker's mad at John Economist for framing someone.
Yeah.
We'll spoil it in spoilers. And it's just him listing a list of names of people he could have framed instead. And it's just...
I'd love to know whether that was improv.
I think it is because the scene after the credits, it's just it feels very real. I don't know.
It's good.
Yeah.
He's done some
because
improv.
Agee's a stand-up comedian.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
So I guess they probably bounced off each other pretty well.
Exactly. So there you bloody go. Anyway, so the spoilers are that the villains are the villains of sort are called the Butterflies, and they are alien bugs from another planet, and they come down to Earth and they burrow into your brain, take over your body, and then they have this global plan of world domination, seemingly for nefarious purposes.
Oh, yes.
And I think at some point, they're not strictly from the comics as well.
I've never heard of them, but I don't know.
I think the only connection you could make is
Starro again.
Yes, yes, but like Mr. Mind.
The worm.
He's a caterpillar worm man. And is there some connection there? But I would say even then, that's pretty
It wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to use Mr. Mind.
Yeah,
but
they did him in Shazam.
They sort of did him in Shazam, and I think it's using Shazam stuff is there's a lot of legal gray area in there for whatever reason, like because of ownership rights and stuff like that. Captain Marvel Shazam was in an episode of Justice League. He's in one episode and he fights Batman. Not Batman. He fights Superman. Yeah. And apparently that was an absolute nightmare to arrange because of the ownership.
Oh, really?
They wanted to put him in the whole series, but they couldn't because complicated.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That is complicated, isn't it, Mason?
Yes.
Yeah. Off the back of that, builds up to a Starship Troopers style big alien bug that they have to kill, which is a cow, which is providing sustenance for the butterfly people or whatever. And they're going to teleport it out to another place, but they have to go in and kill it and whatever. And what's interesting, it throws, and I'm jumping way ahead, but it throws out the kind of the moral conundrum at the end of we're not here to harm people of Earth, except that we're burrowing into their skulls and whatever.
Sure. And they have this. They have the same ethos as Peacemaker. They ultimately want to save the world, but in order to do that, they might have to kill and burrow into the brains of everybody on Earth to do it. And is that worth it? And Peacemaker is having a change of heart over the course of the series, and maybe that's not
also
what he wants
like,
to do anymore.
Maybe they're not. Maybe she's lying to him.
That's true, yeah.
Maybe that's not. I mean, to me, it seemed legit, and that's what actually was happening. But yeah, I think it really like kind of as it's coming to the bit where like, okay, and they're gonna blow up the thing and whatever. There was a moment to stop and be like, hang on a minute.
Sure, yeah.
What is actually happening here? And maybe the guy who was working for them he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Which was like a double bluff because there's multiple like levels to that guy as well.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Which he was really good also. But I thought that was terrific just to kind of stop and he has to think about it and then he ultimately does what he always does, really, for good or ill.
Yeah.
Probably ill. But even leading up to that, like that moment in the field, you know what I mean? They've got that kind of they live kind of like.
Yeah, right.
And what's that other one with Donald Sutherland?
They Live Too.
They Live, you know, the other one. Aliens.
Cocoon.
Cocoon.
No, it's not Cocoon.
It's not Cocoon.
It's not Cocoon at all, no. They're going to need another title sequence.
Because of all the
for
people
next season, because all the people that died, because all the cops were killed.
Yeah. Or keep it.
Or keep it.
Or keep it, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, but also, like, they hinted all these kind of other characters and you know, Justice League members and whatever. Mm-hmm. And then at the end...
Yeah.
Some of them
Some
show
of the
up.
Justice League, notably not Batman.
Probably
for the same reasons.
I do have some idea of what's going on there. Mm-hmm. So it was initially only supposed to be Jason Momoa, but then it turned out that Ezra Miller was available. So they went, yep. Ezra Miller, I think, was filmed through Marvel when James Gunn was filming Guardians. So Marvel were like, yeah, you can use the studio to
interesting,
do this green screen cameo.
Okay.
Which is interesting. I don't think...
So Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa were not together?
I would doubt it, because otherwise they probably would have interacted physically,
sure,
I'd imagine.
Yeah.
You know?
A fist bump or
I mean, you could do that on green screen.
Big hug.
Yeah.
You know?
But I wasn't expecting it. When I saw their silhouettes, I was like, oh, this is just stand-ins, and some of them were. But I thought that was really fascinating. And the fact that he was able to just... openly mock Aquaman, even though he's got $1 billion movie coming out this year. You know, I don't think there's a lot of people who work for DC who would allow to do that. You know, and Jason Momoa was apparently like, yeah, whatever. I'll talk about having sex with fish. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, so Wonder Woman was there, obviously a stand-in.
Yes,
Superman was there as a stand-in.
Yeah. I saw an interview recently with Henry Cavill, and he's like, I absolutely would be love to be back in the Superman suit.
Yeah.
Well, you had your chance, mate.
Well, he's probably out of contract, and they would have had to pay him. And
he's probably doing Sherlock Holmes. And
he's probably doing it. Yeah, and also the other thing is
he's at a games workshop.
He's at a games workshop.
Buying Warhammer figurines. He's like, I cannot. I have a regular appointment at the games workshop.
And the last time we saw him, aside from Justice League, the reissue, whatever you want to call it, the remaster, he was faceless in Shazam.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't him, but yeah. So it's clearly something going on there. And I still think DC don't know what they're doing with Superman.
Definitely, yeah.
Or which version of Superman that is going to be. And I just think he's also out of contract at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Cyborg was missing because Ray Fisher's not going to come back to Warner Brothers.
Not surprising.
Anytime soon, it seems, until there's like a big shift in like the higher ups. And Batman was actually... filmed. There was a stunt double or body double who did it, put on the suit. But I think that also is a thing of like, which Batman is this? Like,
You don't think it's just the Snyderverse Batman?
Not necessarily, because I think in the Flash
You think it should have been the 60s Batman?
Yes.
Nice.
No, look, it probably was a Snyderverse one, but I think also...
Everybody else is in shadow and he's just in daytime outside the Gotham Police Department.
With a parasol.
Yeah.
But I think they're trying to figure out... I think we're going to get a shift in Batman later this year with the Flash.
Right. Uh-huh.
And I think they probably didn't want to confuse people. And I also think because Robert Pattinson is going to be Batman soon.
Yeah,
so I think that's probably a factor. But
yeah, see, that's the thing, though. You can't just chuck him in, can you?
No.
But you can chuck Vigilante in.
Exactly.
Nobody cares. I loved Vigilante as a kid.
Me too.
Yeah.
They recast him like a few episodes in and they had to reshoot all of that. The previous actor wasn't
so this
working.
is Freddie Stromer.
Yeah.
Also British.
Yes.
Who was the previous one?
I can't remember his name.
Okay.
But yeah, so he left like just creative differences. I'm not sure.
Oh.
There doesn't seem to be any bad blood. What's his name? Not Peacemaker, Vigilante.
Vigilante.
And his visor's prescription, James Gunn confirmed.
That makes sense, yeah. I've always thought about that. I'm like, I'd have to get a prescription visor.
Original Freddie Stromer.
He's very much, he's the Bugs Bunny of this.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like so I don't know if this is look, if somebody wants to bug James Gunn about this, I'd be curious. So Adrian Chase, the vigilante that he is, the version that's been put in the show.
Yeah.
In the comic books, he had it was never really explained properly, really, but he could like recover very quickly from like wounds and things, and like including gunshot wounds and stuff like that.
Sort of happens in this.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like he's sort of it was sort of a pseudo mystical thing. I think it was like a mind over matter thing. He didn't really have any superpowers, but he could like I think he learned this skill somewhere or something like that. It was one of those vague things. And this guy, like in a lot of the like if somebody like at one point Harcourt is shot and it's a real it's a real dramatic thing and there's a long recovery process. But Vigilante gets shot and stabbed.
A bomb goes off in front of him.
Yeah. And he's just fine in the next scene. So I'm wondering if that was factored in.
Yeah, you're probably right. So it was Chris Conrad was the original actor. Oh. And also, interestingly enough, I've just found a quote here from James Gunn. He said, he came in late, as in Freddy.
Yeah.
We already shot 5.5 episodes with the actor.
Wow.
Incredibly talented guy, but we're on different pages about certain things, and I don't think he wanted to continue on the series in the long run, so he brought in Freddy and in 5.5 episodes and reshot all of his scenes.
Wow.
So there you go. So that's quite a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
I feel like also in other circumstances, they'd just be like, you just kill him at the end of the season. Or we'll recast him next season and who cares?
Yeah, right,
you know?
And I mean, again, the Vigilante, interestingly, is a character who, like that version, spoiler alert for like the late 80s, early 90s, he killed himself.
Oh, did he?
And they just kept... He's
putting a new person
He's a very rare character in the sense that they haven't just brought him back to life. They brought in his brother, Dorian Chase, as a new vigilante, and there's been a bunch of other vigilantes. There's been a lady vigilante. There was a split personality vigilante that didn't know he was the vigilante. Like there's been a bunch of them, and he's just never come back.
That in itself, I mean, I do want to see him come back, but that would have been interesting where they bring in a different guy every season,
right?
Just getting killed.
They just do the rush job. They did that in Titans where Jason Todd was killed, and then a week later he's the Red Hood, as opposed to like 2 decades.
A week? Was it a week?
It was a week. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it in terms of continuity of the show, Mason?
A week.
1 week.
Yeah, pretty much.
Was it a work week? Was it 5 days?
I think it was like a calendar week. It would have been 7 days. Yeah.
So James Gunn also said this about like Batman and who else was involved in it. He says, I don't know what I can. There are reasons for it, but I'm actually uncertain whether I can say what those reasons are. It might have to do with future stuff. So that's like Batman related, and so I'd imagine, and maybe Cyborg, and I don't know. But anyway, I feel like I've got caught up on that big cameo at the end, where it's not really the point of the show.
Sure isn't, yeah.
But what a good...
It's a character growing beyond. It's a person growing beyond like their upbringing and becoming a new person.
And he sees his dad in dreams.
Oh, yeah, he goes mad as well.
And his dad's got like a big white supremacist suit that he flies around in or whatever. Man, good stuff.
Yeah.
Not the white supremacy thing. That I'm against.
I don't know. You did combine those two sentences very closely together, which was odd, I thought.
I like to think there was a long enough pause where people could understand that I was not referring to the previous thing when I said good stuff.
I tell you what, I'm enjoying this riff. I think this is the new one of us is attracted to Maid Marian joke. It's you are a white supremacist. Or no, you're not. You just agree with a lot of the stuff that they say.
No, Mason. Okay, that's not true either.
Okay. Turn this into a meme.
They don't have any good points.
All right. Also, for people wondering, I'm changing the subject.
Are we?
Yeah. For people wondering when Eagle is a real eagle and when he's a CGI, he's never a real eagle. He's always CGI the whole time. But it's very impressive.
I love that, and this is not a diss at Marvel, but for the Falcon, he's got a killer drone.
Yes, right.
And in the comics, the Falcon has had a falcon as a pet, but here they're just like, he's got an eagle. And it just pecks out people's eyes. And it's just like a really well-trained eagle.
Yeah.
For some reason that he has. Yeah, good stuff. Anyways, again, best series ever. You should watch it, Mason.
Yeah. I did.
Yeah, you should watch it.
I liked it. It was good.
I recommend it to you.
Okay, great. I'll watch it.